BJ Counsel. I view the world through the lens of having been followed by a white clerk as a child while shopping in a five and dime. I'm a retired police executive and own UN50, which gives guidance on surviving interactions with police.
I'm Harmony Chavis, and I view the world through the lens of one of the most misunderstood and diverse generations in our nation's history. I'm a social worker and a believer of radical kindness and love as modalities of healing.
My name is Andrew Counsel. I view the world through the lens of a generational camera phone. I wake up as a black male and go to bed as a black male. I am surviving this never-ending court case we commonly call life in the best way I know how.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since UN50 has done a podcast, and thank you for those of you that are joining us. I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at our webinar that we had on June 18th. Our guest and I was there on our webinar back then, and I asked her then if she would be on my podcast. So for those of you who are new, my name is BJ Counsel. UN50 is an organization that goes around and talk to primarily Black and brown bodies how to safely interact with law enforcement. UN50, the podcast was created to talk about safely interacting with law enforcement, but also other issues concerning policing in the Black community, mental health, crime, education, and the things that impact the Black community, not just policing, because we believe that the issues around policing are actually larger than policing. So we record, and we are in the Bull City in Durham, North Carolina is where we are. So again, thank you for those that are faithful to joining and listening to us, and those of you that may be new. So today, who we have is Ms. Aminah Thompson, who I asked to join us today. And just a little bit about, I'll let her do some of the details, but I just want to let you know she is was a magistrate, or is still a magistrate. I'm not sure. She'll tell us that, for 13 years, but she just recently got elected and she will become the Superior Clerk of Superior Court here in Durham County. She will is running unopposed on the November ballot, so will take over in December. She will be the first African American and also the first woman to hold that position in this county. So, Aminah, Ms. Thompson, thank you. Oh, one more thing too. I just found out, for those of you that may not look at us on YouTube, she's got a beautiful painting from Uganda, right?
From
Ghana.
Yes.
And pink and green. So we found out she's an AKA. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me here. As you mentioned, I'm a magistrate here in Durham. I have been that for 13 years. I came here to Durham to go to school and really just fell in love kind of with the community and stuck around and made it my home. So education was really, really big for my family. Both of my parents were educators, teachers of teachers. So that's really what they instilled in me and my brother. And so, that has really been the center of everything. Educating myself and then turning around and, trying to do what I can to give that back to the community and, spreading resources. And so that's, a little bit about me in a nutshell. I have a son who's 2.5. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. And so that, of course, is a joy and a pleasure.
Yeah.
And he keeps me energized for sure.
Right. So you went to Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill. So are you a lawyer are you a lawyer kind of? I mean, because I know magistrates are judge. I don't think people understand when people say you're a magistrate, but you're a judge. I don't think people understand that.
And so, yes, I do have a law degree. I got my law degree from Chapel Hill. I passed the bar. I actually practiced law for about a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was really, thrown into the fire. I tried a couple cases, like jury trials. I was in personal injury law. And then was appointed as a magistrate shortly thereafter.
Cool.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your parents, because my mother is she's 92 and she's an old school educator. So coming from a home with an educator, tell me a little bit about that for you, because I know how it was
um,
for me.
So yeah, it was never a question about whether or not I would pursue my education. Both of my parents went to the University of Massachusetts in
Mm,
Amherst, and my dad was like a staunch civil rights activist. He was born in Greenville,
wow.
South Carolina,
Wow.
and actually moved to Massachusetts. And, when I think about it and just how privileged I am, moved to
Hmm.
Massachusetts because of the poor education in South Carolina,
Wow.
and wanted my brother and I to have something better. So moved to
Wow.
Massachusetts. Both of my parents got their doctorates in education from the University of Massachusetts.
Wow.
Um, and when I think back about it, my mom was in residential life, and so she was a resident director and had an apartment in the residence hall.
Mhm.
Um, and now, when I think about it, how did you afford to have two young children and you're in school? And she's like, explaining to me and my brother how she did it.
Right, right.
Working
Wow.
on campus. Both of my parents, my dad was the director of the Office of Third World Affairs. And I think about that too. At the time, it was called Third World Affairs.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, he was the diversity, equity, inclusion guy before that was even a thing.
Right. Wow.
um, and so that's what it was. That's what, I remember being in the library with them and being in class with them and being at staff meetings or whatever it was. Most of my childhood we lived in the residence halls. That's where I would sell my Girl Scout cookies
Wow.
to the college students.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's what I lived every day. And, I'm so, so, so grateful for that.
Right.
My dad actually passed away at the very start of the pandemic, so about 2 years
Oh,
ago.
oh wow.
Yeah, so absolutely heartbreaking.
I'm
Um,
sure.
but I just, I'm so proud to be able to try to carry on his legacy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You were telling me when we first talked a couple of times, that civil rights was is kind of in your bones and in your family and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, wow, awesome. So I kind of want to, I do want to kind of talk about you being a magistrate, because I want people to really kind of understand it, because a lot of people don't know, you know, I mean, you're gonna go you're a magistrate. So kind of really talk about the fact you're a judge, because you got to listen to the person articulate to you, or tell you what it is they want to take a warrant out on, or if an officer can, whatever. But kind of just kind of talk, about what the role of a magistrate, especially as it relates to community members coming into your space. But uh, as a police officer, it used to, so back way back in the day when I first started hearing, said, magistrates are actually they're judges. I was like, oh, it was even a little mind blowing for me. I was like, oh, okay, I get that, yeah, and I can see that. But most people, they just don't call you judges. I don't even know why don't they call you judge instead of calling you magistrate?
I tend to call myself a judge. I tend to use the title magistrate judge because I do think that people aren't aware totally of what magistrates do. And in a lot of instances, magistrates don't get the respect that the position
Right.
really should, as far
Yes.
as being a judge and being a
Mhm.
judicial official.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I have had the benefit for working most of my career as a magistrate on the civil side. And I
Okay.
now, when I started and now again, work on the criminal side. So I've been able to
Okay.
see, kind of the breadth of what magistrates deal with. So
Wow.
on the civil side, it's landlord tenant cases, small claims cases,
Okay.
and then marriages, administer oaths, things like that. But mainly, how it affects the community is those landlord tenant cases, obviously.
Mm. Hmm.
If no one appeals the judgment, it's a final judgment.
Wow.
So, you don't get any more of a judge than that.
Wow.
And that, is huge. Just the housing, what is really a
Yeah.
crisis. And then also small claims. So anything less than $10,000, if you don't have an attorney, just want to collect money that somebody owes you, which is also very detrimental to someone who none of us have money, $500, $5,000 to just give away. So
yeah.
and then so on the criminal side, the magistrate is kind of the gatekeeper, also issues charges, finds probable cause on warrants for arrest, criminal summons, and sets conditions of release. That's the main thing that magistrates do that interfaces with the community. Also issues involuntary commitments.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, especially now, it's such a drastic difference from when I started 13 years ago in the criminal magistrate's office. The number of people who come in for IVCs, in my, estimation, has really skyrocketed.
You and what you used acronyms, what was it?
The IVC, which is the involuntary commitment
Okay.
procedure.
All right.
You
Cool.
know, if someone is having a crisis, or mental health or substance abuse, and their loved one or a clinician feels that they need to be evaluated for those things, and so we issue the paperwork that gives an officer the right to go pick the person up and take them to be evaluated.
Yes. Yeah. I want to go back to the briefly the landlord stuff, because you said once you make the judgment and there's no appeal, right? Obviously by I guess the person who the landlord came in on, right? About.
Well, in some cases, the landlord does not prevail, and then the landlord
Okay.
may appeal. So
Okay.
whoever the not prevailing party can appeal for any reason or no reason at all, and they have essentially a new trial, as if
Okay.
they were never heard before.
Okay. Is that costly for me as a community member? Is it cost either I or the landlord anything?
It does cost.
Okay.
The cost, so yes, it's costly.
Okay.
You can petition to appeal as an indigent or without paying a fee, and then
Okay.
the clerk handles that. There's certain criteria.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. There's that. I don't know too much about the civil side. I just know about the criminal side, and I
Yeah,
definitely know a lot about the involuntary commitment papers, because that was something that law enforcement. I mean, I just remember we always go down to the magistrate and have to go pick up someone who was or a family member had taken some papers out on a loved one because of the mental health crisis. So that was just one of the things that obviously I'm familiar with, and then stuff. So I think I also let me what you said something, and I still tell people that comment you made on the webinar about, and it's just so true. You made a comment about police officers sending people down to the magistrate to take out warrants, and I think one of the reasons you and 50, I'm trying to get folks to understand as far as law enforcement. I mean, I'm about holding law enforcement accountable. If we're doing something that is unprofessional or aggressive or is just, shooting somebody 16 times in the back is just, we don't need to do that. But on the other side of that coin is trying to figure out how do we keep the government out of our homes, and looking at that comment that you made as a law enforcement officer. If there's a misdemeanor that happens either not in my presence or it's not rising to the level of serious injury and it's just that, then yes, when you said that, I was like, you know what, she's all right. Because I'm in an argument. I'm going to somebody's house about a disturbance, and they're like arguing, and they're like, "Well, I want to take a warrant out on him." Okay, well, you go down there and do that, because I'm not going to do that as a police officer, because that doesn't involve me. So I kind of want you to kind of talk about that. I know we've talked about data, and why I live and die on data, but just anecdotally, I'm trying to figure out how do we as a Black community stop calling the police and stop bringing this judicial government into our homes. Um, from your perspective, you know, how can we stop that? Or how do we educate folks? It's about education. I mean, how do we do
yeah.
that?
So, well, part of the process is that in order to take out a warrant, you have to have called the police and made a report. And, you know, we would have to look at our police report before we could issue a charge. And
Okay.
so,
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm getting time out because that's not how it used to be.
right, it did not used to be
It
like that.
didn't go back. Yeah.
When I first
Okay.
started, it certainly was not that way.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure that audience understands because back in the day, we would just go, you go downtown and take a warrant. Police don't write a report. They don't do anything. They just say, boo, go downtown, take a warrant out, whoever you want to take a warrant out. And there's no police report. Now you're telling me, go ahead. Because I didn't know that.
That the process has changed.
Good.
And I was in civil court during the transition. And when I returned to criminal court, that is the process. And I, won't comment on whether what I think about that, but
Yeah.
it's part of the process that the person now definitely has to call the police, and there has to be presumably some type of investigation there.
Wow. Wow.
That I could, as a magistrate, give whatever weight I decide to give it or not give it. And then I can issue a charge or not. And so I will say that, and this is something, since I've had a conversation with you, I've, been looking at it and seeing what I notice. And it is sometimes law enforcement, I think, there is a discretion about whether you as law enforcement decide to take out a charge or not.
Right.
Based on something that happened outside of your presence. And actually, someone who appeared in front of me mentioned that he didn't understand why law enforcement hadn't taken out a charge on his behalf, because a similar situation happened with him. And in his case, it was with a white guy. And law enforcement came and took out a charge against him. And, he had to appear in court, and it was misdemeanor charges.
Okay.
And so that is something that I, think also has to be examined. Is there a difference, of course, with law enforcement deciding to take out a charge on somebody's behalf or give their, story more weight than another person who has to then come down by themselves, call the police, make another report, do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's probably, tangential to what you asked me, but, that is
no,
also
I think
a factor that needs to be considered.
Yeah, no. These are the difficult conversations that I want to have. I mean, we got to figure this thing out. What is it? Is there discriminatory? I'm going to go down. Yeah, I'll write this report for you and do X or not. I mean, you're right. I mean, the power of arrest is one thing, but the power of discretion is a whole nother thing. Because it's more powerful than the arrest, actually, in my opinion, because it sets you free depending on who you give it to. So no, I think those are the kind of things that have to be looked at. These uncomfortable conversations, but figuring out how do you track that. But I think what I would like for you to do is, so let's just BJ and her spouse have an argument, and so the police are here. I might have done something, but it's a misdemeanor. So they actually have to write a report. If somebody in this space says they want to take a warrant, my partner says she wants to take a warrant out on me, right? But there has to be a report done first, right?
Right.
Once the report is done, then I go to the magistrate.
Correct. And that is a very good example because it's a domestic situation. So, you probably know at law enforcement, then your discretion to go ahead and arrest somebody, of course, is a little bit higher for the safety of whatever the situation is.
Yes.
And so that is a perfect example where a law enforcement agent can say, oh, it's a misdemeanor, I don't really know, or can do some more investigation, can ask a few more questions and decide that, somebody has to be removed.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow. So there's no, so what kind of warrants are, I mean, I guess I'm also trying to figure out, and you and I have talked about this before, just trying to figure out what's pushing black and brown bodies into the system. Is it, and I'm not talking about drug dealers and stuff like that and folks that are carrying, I'm talking about just the misdemeanor stuff. I mean, what's pushing people into the system that really shouldn't be pushing them into the system, like communicating threats, little stuff like that. And I may be kind of overselling that, but I'm trying to figure out how. And why we calling Popo to the house? What's bringing the government to your house, and they end up killing you, and now you're mad at the law enforcement, but yet there's this inability, or we haven't figured out how to teach kids who grow into adults on how to solve problems and communicate. So I'm really trying to figure out on a granular level as far as what's pushing black and brown bodies into the system on that small level. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling. I'm just trying to figure out what
No,
what is it that's really pushing them in there. Yeah.
it makes sense. And I think it comes down to people not knowing what to do,
Mm.
in whatever their situation is. They may have tried to, they may have tried everything, they may have tried nothing. There's definitely a spectrum of people who are just fed up and they did not want to come down to the magistrate's office, but this is kind of their last resort. They may even be scared, if I do this, it's going to, create further retaliation, but I don't know what else to do. And then, at the other end of the spectrum, there are people who that's their first instinct, or that's what they were told to do, and so I don't think there's one singular thing that is driving people.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm just trying to figure out this too simplistic, because I'm just trying to, like, do we just really need to call it? I mean, and you kind of said it, that for some people it's like, I have a friend of mine. Well, she was on the thing, the telecommunicator, Gerald, right? And 911 is default for everything, So I'm trying to figure out, is that also a default for going to the magistrate? It's like, okay, I'm just going to go down here because I'm mad, or I'm going to take a report out, get a report done, then I'm going to go get you arrested, and then here we go. Is just for some folks, is this just a default for some?
Yeah, I do. I guess the lack of education and the lack of resources. If you don't know a number to call that fits your particular situation, then you only have so many options. A
Yeah.
lot of people as well call the magistrate's office.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people, about things that is not within our purview.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow. So how do we do that? How do we educate folks? I mean, magistrates don't go around and tell folks, you don't need to call us for this, you can call us for that. I mean, that's not anything, it's not like you guys got a tour going on, but how how'd you help educate folks that this is what you use this for, you know?
well, that is something that I hope to do as
Oh, okay.
as clerk. Make resources more readily available for people. Make sort of a repository of information where people who at least that are seeking it can find different resources for their particular situation. That is certainly something that I hope to do within the courthouse, and also, hopefully a website. A lot of counties have websites separate and apart from AOC's website,
Okay.
that just has resources and information.
Well,
So
you know what? I apologize for overlooking that. I mean, I know I mentioned that you're going to be the new county clerk of Superior Court. So go ahead and talk about what is that? What are you going to be doing? And talk about some of the things that you want to do that probably going to be pretty creative, because you're going to be the first of everything. And let me just talk about first. I mean, I'm not want to take too much of your thunder, but it's 2022 and we still talking about first black this and first black that. But go
yeah.
ahead. Not again, not to take the
Yeah.
shine off your stuff, but I'm getting, it's like, really, y'all, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I ran against a well-liked incumbent
Ye-
who's been in office for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, you took down a big one, that's for sure. You took down a big one.
And so, I'm looking forward to the challenge, and it certainly
Right.
is going to be a challenge, a transition. Attrition has always been a problem, and
Oh,
so,
wow.
especially in this time period, I'm not expecting that to be any different. Of course, it's getting worse across industries,
Right. Right.
especially service industries,
Yeah.
and the clerks are, it's customer service,
Yes.
and so. I'm looking forward to that challenge for sure. But the clerk of Superior Court is a judge, administrator, record keeper, and comptroller. So the judge over many special proceedings, estates cases, wills, name changes, adoptions, foreclosures. So really a lot of the cases that affect our lives and legacies are heard by the clerk of Superior Court. Also the record keeper, so keeps all the records in the courthouse and provides access to those records. Collects all the money, the fees and fines that come into the courthouse and distributes them, holds it, invests it, different. And so also the administrator. So the people that you deal with when you come into the courthouse, those are all assistant and deputy clerks.
So what is it that, because I'll use the term legacy as far as, land and, wills and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that you think that you think, especially Black folks, that may not know that it would be a good thing for them to do or utilize what that that stuff when you just rattled off, and I apologize because my brain, fifth grade brain. So I mean, there are things that the community might, well, oh, I never knew that, and maybe I should do that for the because you tossed out the word legacy,
Uh-huh.
and we own land and we own property, and are there things that we might need to start doing that we weren't aware that we need to start doing?
Well, so first of all, I, as a magistrate and also as a clerk, will not be able to give any legal advice.
Right, right, right.
So everything I say is not to be taken as legal advice, but just, from my experience as
Right.
being kind of involved in the judicial system. And the one thing I would say is that we do not have wills.
Mm,
We don't, and that is a big thing, it's kind of even taboo in our community. If
mm.
you have a will, you're saying I'm gonna die, or you want me to have a will because you want something from me, or and we have all different, and that
Right,
that maybe I'm saying a little of that in jest, but you hear all these reasons why
yeah,
we don't, and that's the biggest thing, because it makes it
right,
so much easier for the people that you love and are leaving behind.
right,
Um,
right,
we,
right.
to not even have to be involved in the court system to some degree.
Hmm.
Um, so
Wow.
that would be the main thing.
Right. Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I mean, my other half and I, we've got all that stuff, because you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, you might as well go ahead and do it now, because I mean, I think about like my parents are elderly, and we've got the will and the power of attorney and all that, and yeah, it's kind of, you don't want to talk about it, but then if you're in that
Yeah.
moment, I mean, I've been blessed. I haven't had anybody in my immediate circle die, but I can't imagine, like you have experienced that as to, I'm really not going to be in the mood to kind of figure out a lot of stuff. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
want all that done before
Mm-hmm.
I'm an emotional basket case. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get
Yeah,
that.
no, seriously. They're just, difficult conversations. We don't like having them, but that, we should have all of those
Hmm.
conversations with our loved ones while they're able to participate in the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So thanks for, yeah, because I was just like, okay, so what is it that the clerk of superior? So basically, you're just going to be housing all our paperwork is basically what you're going to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. And,
Wow.
making sure it's efficient, and that the access is efficient and equitable, and whether it comes to the clerks that are in the courtroom or that are, it's really serving the public. So,
Right.
when people come into the courthouse, they should be able to get information and help.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been on the civil side, the criminal side. Now you're going up and you're going to have all the paperwork that from the civil and magistrates and stuff like that. So I guess I'm just for, this climate that we're dealing with, the judicial system. I mean, just from where you're perched and where you've been, is there anything that you can just, I don't know, just offer from those perches as to how the Black community can either avoid or navigate the system when they unfortunately kind of get caught up in it.
So of course, prevention is the best thing. Like I was saying with the wills and things like that, it's
Yeah,
to not get involved in the system, to be prepared, and do the right things on the front end, so you're not, so you don't have to be involved in that system.
right,
And
right,
so,
right.
I think I mentioned with the involuntary commitment that there is a large rise in mental health crises. And so I think that's a really big thing that we all need to take a look at. And it kind of needs to be destigmatized in our community, so
Hmm.
people can talk about, whatever problems they're having, or, be able to say, okay, I need a moment,
Right,
or I need
right.
some help. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was I was laughing because this morning in the car, I asked my son if he wanted to call his grandmother on the phone. And he said no. And I was like, why not? You should want to talk to your grandmother. He said, I'm hungry. And I'm like, you know what? If more people would say, I don't want to have this conversation right now. I'm hungry, or I'm angry, or we
Right.
would all we would all be so much better off.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
that's a big thing. If we could all take a lesson from my son, just in, if you need a minute, say you need a minute.
So you need a minute. So that's interesting. Involuntary commitments. I mean, and you're right. So does that necessarily mean that a person doesn't have obviously they don't have access, right? Is that another way to get access, or that's just a last resort to come and get the individual? I mean, a lot of people don't. What am I trying to say? How involuntary commitment is, what is that? I mean, I know what it is. I'm not saying I know it's to come and get someone who's having a mental health crisis. What leads up to that? What is missing in that family that they have to take out involuntary commitment? I guess is what I'm saying. Is that I don't have health insurance, or what is it when they do that part?
So really the standard is that the person is a danger to themselves or
Okay.
to someone else.
Okay. That's right. Okay.
So a lot of times families will come in kind of as a last resort
Okay.
because they know that the person either has mental health in their
Hmm.
family, they see signs and symptoms of what would be considered mental health
Right.
issues that have perhaps never been
Gotcha.
diagnosed. Sometimes, and that's also on a
Right.
spectrum too.
Right.
Some people are like, the person has been diagnosed, they're definitely off their
Right.
medication,
Hmm.
and then some people are like, no, she's never been diagnosed, but she's exhibiting these
Hmm.
behaviors. And she said,
Okay.
um, and so, people come, and it allows the officer to go pick the person up and take them for
Right.
evaluation.
Yeah.
That's After that, the doctor will
Right.
say, you know,
Okay.
which is different than, somebody being declared incompetent.
Hmm.
Totally, kind of
Hmm.
a higher level
Hmm.
of they're not been able to handle their own
Right.
affairs at
Right.
all.
Right.
Um, and have to have someone appointed to take care of
Yeah.
them,
Okay.
perhaps.
Let's just talk about, I mean, I kind of want to go back to, and I may be just pushing a topic that's no longer a thing now, but just trying to figure out what can we do, or how can we, because your education is all about education. And I don't know whether we talked about it at the event, but my thing is, how can we help folks educate themselves and children how to communicate. Because if they know how to communicate and solve problems, then I don't need to call the police. I don't need the judicial system and the government in my house trying to work out something with, my other half that they can't solve because, their average response time is 6 minutes. So I ain't got time. I ain't got time to help you solve something with somebody you've been with for 20 years. 6 minutes just ain't gonna do it.
Right.
So from your perspective and the thing you've seen, do you think it has to do with, or do you think, I'm not has to do with, but is there a space for more education and teaching people how to problem solve?
For sure. For sure. And I think that of course starts at a young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
And so, of course, coming from an educational background, I think that early childhood education is so crucial.
Yeah.
That's when you learn how to problem solve and how to share and how to say, I need a minute, I'm hungry.
Right. Right.
And so, that's kind of an age-old thing that we have to figure out how we can deal with that piece.
Yeah.
Because for sure, I think the education is the crucial part. And, people say that it's the great equalizer.
Yeah.
That's the difference between, being a have and a have not. That's the difference between knowing the right way to handle something and ending up, in jail.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it on at the event a little bit. It's all about it. It really is boils down to education, and trying to figure out, the other thing too. And again, it's just data that I'm trying to find out too. That individuals that are coming into the system, I think we already know the prison population. Um, most of them individuals, black and brown bodies, don't even have high school diplomas. I mean, we already know that. So, also, does that mean that they're also the ones that are coming down and taking warrants out on each other? You know, um, because this is a last resort. Even though now, that you educated me, they gotta have a report. They gotta have a report. So I think it's just, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, how do we keep the government out of judicial system out of people's houses?
Huh.
I know
I
it's a big one. I know. I'm just,
right.
yeah, that's a, like I said, with my friend, the telecommunicator, I mean, it's a default. 911 is a default to call the police to your house, and then here we go making a report, and now we down there taking out a warrant. What?
Yeah.
You know?
So I guess I think of it a lot from an institutional standpoint.
Mm,
And just as far as the training of the 911 communicators, of the clerks, of the magistrates, of the people who are on the front lines,
mm-hmm,
to be able to disseminate appropriate information
mm-hmm,
and to be able to kind of triage what needs to happen. No, you don't really need a police officer. You need,
mm-hmm.
X.
Right. Right.
And so really from an institutional standpoint, that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think it's easier for the institutions to pivot and to offer that training and to offer those resources than to expect each individual to be able to, figure it out on their own.
Wow, I like that. I really like that. That it's easier for the institution to pivot because they're gonna hopefully I don't know whether this makes sense because they're not gonna be the ones. They're not the individual who's probably in that crisis
Right,
mode.
right.
Yes. So they're not stressing. So they have that opportunity. I love that. That's customer service
Yeah.
on a larger scale.
Yeah, and so I absolutely see, more need for training across the board. With all of our officials, law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
judges and magistrates,
Mm-hmm.
911 communicators,
Mm-hmm.
everybody,
Mm-hmm.
clerks,
Yeah.
everyone.
You know what, that fits into some more conversations I'm having too with some folks in law enforcement. Is just the changing the way that law enforcement is actually trained. I mean, we spend a lot of time learning how to shoot, drive, write reports, but we don't spend a lot of time communicating,
Right,
learning how to
right.
problem solve.
And
You know what I'm
learning
saying?
how to de-escalate and
Yeah,
learning how to, certain things that will really make a difference in a split second about somebody's life.
yeah. Yeah, taking that time. And see, that's the other thing I think too. I push back sometimes on the community. I don't have a problem standing there with you with 20 minutes, but you got to understand that means I can't get to that next call that they might need. I don't, if you want me to stay here and de-escalate and talk to you for 30 minutes, I can talk to you for 30 minutes because that means I ain't running no call, but also somebody else probably needs me. But we got to learn how to do that. And to hear you say that, that's at all levels because it's a different space now. It's a different space. And hearing you put it that way, that we all need to figure out how to pivot when that person is in front of us with that crisis at every level of the judicial system.
Yeah.
I love that. That's probably going to be the name of the podcast.
All right.
Institutions need to know how to pivot.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I know that for me, it's law enforcement. A lot of the training hasn't changed, and I've been out of it for 20 years and been for almost 40 years since I've been in the academy. And basically, a lot of it is really basic law enforcement. It hasn't changed. It hasn't
Yeah.
changed.
And I think it is a big part of it is, as I keep saying, is kind of preventing it from escalating to that level, because then once it escalates, then you'll be there for 2 hours, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So much better to spend an extra, and with the right training, you can cut that 30 minutes down to 15. So,
yeah,
it's better to spend that 15 minutes on the front end than, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say about de-escalation, because I want folks to understand that, as in law enforcement, de-escalation, that's the buzzword that everybody's doing, but it's also we're trying to figure out how to communicate, get the person to do what we ask them to do, but also recognize they need the audience to understand that sometimes you can't de-escalate just because law enforcement, I mean, that's just the nature of that beast. But those times when we can, we need to, that needs to be where we need to start. But recognize that in some situations, stuff goes south, and that's just human nature. That's just the nature of the beast. But de-escalation should always be trying to do something. Because I just did somebody sent me something about a man that was he ended up dying, but the officers didn't what I can see didn't they put him down on the ground. But for law enforcement, that's the safest space for a person to be. For us, get you on the ground and I can do what I need to do. And then people are like, why didn't they de-escalate? Well, this man was in his underwear, he was running around in the middle of the street. You can't de-escalate that. Okay, you have to do something with that, and sometimes it doesn't end well. So I just want to make sure people understand, yes, you can de-escalate when there's that time, but if people are actively doing something physical, that's not a moment that you can't start with de-escalation on that one. You've got to figure out how to get them calm first. So yeah, I think that's I appreciate you saying that because you guys deal with that too. So a police officer's already made a report. So they're still coming down and they're probably still angry, right? Some
right.
of them are still kind of cranked up when they're in front of you. So what do you do with that?
I mean, that's when it comes down to knowing how to communicate and knowing how to, not
Yeah.
say things that are, or at least try not to say things that are going to trigger a person even further. Or,
Yeah.
and a big thing I say is, just to show people respect and
There you
just
go.
to, yeah, that's really the main thing because you see that all the time with judges and magistrates, with police officers, with, everybody who will talk down to someone who's come in front of them or who, treat people a certain way. And not to say I haven't been guilty of being short with somebody
Right.
or, maybe delivering something differently than I should have.
Right.
But as a fundamental rule, I try to always just show people respect.
Right.
And generally, you can't lose with that.
Oh, I'm here to probably start wrapping this up, but I want to let you know that you saying respect is just RESPECT. I've been doing this work since 2017, and there are 5 things that always come up during my presentations with primarily Black and brown bodies. And the first thing that always comes up is the law enforcement officer didn't respect me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like, if you can show an individual, just respect, just respect. And the thing that I use, I mean, is that they say, the example is like on the south side of town, you get "What's up, homeboy," right? But on the north side of town, you get "Sir, how can I help you today?"
Right.
Just something that simple. And 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 it's just kind of like, and I'm trying to get some training for law enforcement to talk about why Black folks, a little annoyed with y'all. And that's the first thing I throw in the room. And I feel like I'm talking to first graders because they're like, respect, because that's just treating another human being with respect. And I feel like I'm like I'm saying something to adults that we all got when we were we were kids, right?
Yeah, it seems so simple,
It,
but
yeah.
really, I mean, and that is the main thing that you see, especially when you start getting charges like resist, delay, and obstruct and different things going on. It's definitely comes down to a respect thing most of the time.
Right. So, okay, I'm getting ready to, I don't know I'm jumping on what you just said. So somebody come in there and they got charged with resisting and delaying. And so they're saying like, well, the officer disrespected me. Right. And I don't know what I'm hearing at. I'm trying to read in between lines. I'm just, they're like, it just set them off. And so here we go. Now we got, you're struggling with the officer or you ran from the officer because it was something they said. And it boils down to disrespect.
Yeah, a lot of, and I see that a lot of things that could have ended in a citation, escalate for whatever reason. And that could be disrespect going either way,
Right,
you know?
right, right, right. Yeah, and see, and again, you're hitting it right on the number. The officers got a look, boo. Don't nobody like you because you in that uniform. You know what I'm saying? It ain't you. It's not. They don't like dislike BJ. They dislike the fact I'm in this uniform and what I represent. So that's why they're disrespecting you, and you can't take that personal.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I again have to remember. I as the official or, the institution am in a
Mm-hmm.
better position to be respectful and to be because I'm not in the middle of a crisis situation.
Right, right. And well, I like the way you said that too, because you're right. We're just representing the institution, and we should know better.
Right.
And this institution is offering a service. We're here, we're doing a job, and we're delivering customer service. So yeah, and I appreciate you saying so. Yeah, because some days, I might have an attitude because I'm a human being. I got a bad day. You know,
Yeah.
I got elderly parents. They're having their issues, and I had to listen to it for hours last night. But I got to get them go to work. So yeah, I may not be in the best mood today.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you. I mean, it's a job. It's a
Yeah.
job. So yeah. So yeah, this has been really cool. So tell me what you'd like to leave with our audience.
Oh wow. I I don't know if there's one thing I'd particularly like to leave, but I'm excited to be here and excited to continue serving the citizens of Durham. I think there's a lot of work that we can do institutionally just to make things more equitable and more accessible and have more resources available across the board. So I'm just really, looking forward to that. And
Cool.
yeah, moving into the next kind of generation of hopefully judicial system.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah, and congratulations. And so for those of us who are in the Bull City of Durham, so pay attention. She's going to be taking over in December, and she's going to wanting to create information so folks understand how to access and use that system of the clerk of court. So um, I'm looking forward to that and bringing changes in that, in that you're serving the community in a manner that they can learn from and use the resources that you're going to be making them aware of that they have access to. So thank you for your willingness to do that. So that's awesome. I'm excited for you. I can tell that you're going to be doing that, and just your father. I'm sure you're going to be doing that in his honor, making sure that folks have their civil rights and understand what that is and how powerful that's going to be for them. So I wish you nothing but success. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do. Don't know if I can be of any service to you, but I know I'm going to be. I've already told you I'm going to be bugging you, trying to figure out what kind of data that that I can use to do the work that I do and trying to help Black and brown bodies, not use the system at all, as far as being a part of that. So thanks again for taking the time. And I was kind of hoping your 2.5-year-old was
You're
gonna
gonna
kind of
run in the
yeah, I
room.
was kind of was like, oh, I was
Yeah.
kind of hoping he was gonna do that, but okay. So what's his first name?
Josiah.
Josiah. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
hoping he was gonna blow us up, but I
Yeah.
guess he
Well,
kind of what's he doing?
you'll have to have me back.
Yeah, what's he doing? What's he doing? He
Um,
just
he's obsessed with the alphabet. So
oh wow.
I'm sure he's in there, putting words together
Oh,
or
nice.
yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, Aminah Thompson, our new Durham Court Clerk of Superior Court, taking over in December. Congratulations again. And again, thank you for saying yes to joining us. And
My
for those
pleasure.
yeah, and for those of you that have tuned in, keep an eye out for those of us who live in the city. Thanks for joining us again. I know it's been a while. Hopefully, we'll have one or two more before the end of the year. As always, stay well, stay safe, peace.